Good evening and welcome to India Watch. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. On this show, we track the biggest stories in India. With the new government in charge, there are new challenges, new plans being made, new targets to be met. There's a lot that needs to be discussed and highlighted. In the next 30 minutes, we'll bring you up to speed with what's happening in this country. As always, verified updates, unbiased analysis. Let's start with the very latest. 2 days ago, a military plane went missing in India. It was an AN-32 aircraft of the Indian Air Force. A search operation has been on, entering the third day today, but no leads yet. This plane took off from Jorhat in Assam on Monday afternoon. It was headed for the Menchuka Advanced Landing Ground in Arunachal Pradesh. This is near the Chinese border. Somewhere along the way, the plane went missing. It lost contact with the ground agencies at 1 p.m. on Monday. 13 people were on board. There were 8 crew members and 5 armed forces personnel. As I said, a massive effort is underway to locate this missing aircraft. A team of 13 Air Force personnel is working overtime to find it. Spy planes, ISRO satellites have been pressed into action. Helicopters and ground patrol units have been deployed, but no sign of it yet. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, we are told, is being briefed on the situation on a regular basis. Throughout the day today, we've been speaking to experts to understand what could have happened. Why is it taking so much time, the search operation? What are the challenges before the search and rescue team? The biggest one is the difficult terrain. Earlier in the day, we spoke to retired Air Marshal Anil Chopra, someone who has himself flown an AN-32 during service.
I have done extensive amount of flying in this area. I've had 2 postings in the east. I've also flown the AN-32 aircraft. And the search and rescue in the thick jungles of Arunachal is a very, very complex exercise, and we have known this for last 60 to 70 years. Air maintenance is required because the army has to be maintained, and therefore there has to be continuous flying by transport aircraft and helicopters in the area. Now, as you just mentioned, the ravines are very steep. The trees are very tall. The vegetation is very thick. If somebody was to walk through this jungle, it may take about 1 hour to cross just 100 meters. That is the kind of thickness of the jungle that is over there.
So that was about the terrain. Let's also tell you a bit about the plane, the AN-32. It was created especially for India by the erstwhile USSR. It was inducted into service way back in 1986. The AN-32 is a workhorse for the Indian Defence Forces. But the plane is not future-proof. It will have to be eventually replaced sooner rather than later. For now, the plane is being used with necessary upgrades. An AN-32 was built near Kiev in Ukraine. After the breakup of the USSR, India continued to purchase the necessary equipment from Ukraine, but the upgrades have been slow, thanks to the slow procurement procedures and India's bureaucratic delays.
AN-32 was an aircraft which was specially designed and built for India. Why for India? Because, we have very peculiar conditions. We have high temperatures in our country, and we have got very high landing grounds. AN-32 is expected to land at 10,000-12,000 feet. And at that height, it should be able to, especially in summer, be able to carry enough troops and enough materials and cargo. So the aircraft was designed specially for the Indian Air Force by modifying the AN-26 by giving it more powerful engines and also making some other design changes. So the aircraft has done well. But we cannot continue to fly this aircraft because in times to come we will be running out of spares. The spare chain is already not so good. The percentage serviceability is also getting affected. So therefore there is a need to look at AN-32 replacement very, very quickly. But mind you, we have got 100 aircraft. That's a large fleet. And it is also important to find means to sustain this fleet after it has got upgraded in the coming year or so.
Now, here's something that we must know. The AN-32 is not a fighter aircraft. It's a transport plane. Though it has had a steady track record, India has seen at least 4 crashes of the Air Force's AN-32 planes. In 1986, one AN-32 disappeared over the Arabian Sea. No trace of it was found, ever. 4 years later, another plane crashed in Kerala's Ponmudi mountain range. In recent years, the plane has been giving the Indian Air Force some grief. In 2009, one aircraft crashed in Arunachal Pradesh. All 13 people on board were killed. India ordered upgrades to the AN-32 fleet after this. In 2016, another AN-32 went missing. Again, never found. This plane was flying from Chennai to Port Blair. The search operations yielded nothing. All 29 people on board were declared dead. This is just about one type of planes. The recent spike in Indian Air Force crashes has raised concerns. According to a report published in January this year, 27 Indian Air Force planes have crashed in the last 4 years. As many as 40 lives have been lost. Most of the accidents in the last 10 years have involved either the MiG-21, the AN-32 or the Sukhoi Su-30. Most of these planes are well past their retirement age. They not only put lives in danger, they also burn a hole in the budget of the Indian Air Force. A report in March this year made a major claim. The IAF's budget to acquire new assets does not even cover outstanding bills on past purchases of equipment. Where will they get new one? All this is a result of poor policy, compromised procurement and lack of political will over the years. This problem has grown over the years and the situation has accumulated. In fact, the need to modernize the Indian Air Force was first brought up in the 1990s, but pilots still fly old and outdated planes. Take the case of the Rafale deal. The first request for information to buy medium multi-role combat aircraft was raised way back in 2004. The deal to buy the Rafale fighter jet, though, was signed only in 2016. It took us 12 years just to sign a deal, 12 years. And now in June 2019, we are still waiting for the first plane. The first fighter jet of Rafale will be delivered only in September this year. It will take a few more years for the Air Force to get the full fleet as per the deal, by which time the world will already have moved to a more advanced fighter jet. The Indian Air Force clearly paying the price, and a heavy price at that, for such delays. Joining us now is retired Air Marshal Nirdosh Tyagi. And the first question I want to ask you, sir, is what more can you tell us about the AN-32? What role does it play in the Indian Air Force? How crucial is this jet for the forces?
AN-32 is a transport aircraft which is a workhorse for the Air Force. It was procured in mid-80s and it has been used extensively in supplies to difficult terrain troops in forward areas and load carrier requirements wherever Air Force needs it.
When missing more than 2 days back, the search operations have been on. What, according to you, could have gone wrong?
The aircraft lost contact while going to Machuka from Jorhat. It was going to an advanced landing ground and flying towards the hills. The problem in hill flying and flying over that terrain is that weather is unpredictable, and at times when you're in the valley and if there is all of a sudden the clouds move in, then it becomes difficult to get out, and this could be a problem, but only after investigations the exact cause will be known.
Why do you think search operations, search and rescue teams have not been able to make any significant headway? We've pressed everything that we have into action and yet no leads. Is it because of the difficult terrain, or are there any other factors that could be at play?
Most prominent factor is terrain and the foliage. The area is covered by thick jungles, and even an aircraft of the size of AN-32, if it crashes, gets lost in those jungles, and it's very difficult to spot it from the top. Not always possible, and it's not only true of AN-32. Many fighter accidents have taken place in Assam and hilly area, and it poses difficulty to find the wreckage.
Some reports claim that obsolete equipment was used in this particular plane. Are the delays in upgrades, the delays in procurement, creating problems for the Indian Air Force to the extent that planes go missing and lives are at risk?
For search and rescue, the important equipment is your emergency locator transmitter. And what I've read in media reports that ELT on this aircraft was old generation. and they haven't been able to pick signals and to adequate to home on to the wreckage. Now, this appears to be something related to vintage of equipment. AN-32s were being upgraded and modified for the last maybe 10 years or so. The contract was with Ukraine, and it ran into a problem because of Russia-Ukraine issues, which you are well aware of. And only about half the fleet has been upgraded so far. And as far as the media reports go, this aircraft was probably not an upgraded aircraft. The aircraft life was this is the second point. The aircraft life was about 25 years from the time of induction, and these aircraft were inducted between say 84 and 91. So you can calculate from that they are towards the fag end of their life, and all the non-upgraded aircraft are probably working on life extension.
So these are aircraft flying on life extension way beyond their expiry date, and this one was not an upgraded aircraft, and that is the crux of the problem. Air Marshal Tyagi, thanks very much for joining us with that perspective. The search operation, as we said, continues. Meanwhile, politics is still brewing. It's World Cup season, we know, so let's kick up a storm. What is common between the Australian cricket team and India's opposition leaders, you may ask? They're both sore losers. It's been barely days since the Lok Sabha election result came out, and opposition parties are already blaming others for the drubbing they suffered. In some cases, the blame game began even before the results, like the discord between allies, Congress and JDS in Karnataka, but we'll come to that state later. Let's start from the day of the results. 23rd May, Mamata Banerjee came up with a quotable tweet on that day. She said, and I'm quoting, "Congratulations to the winners, but the losers are not losers." Now, I'm not quite sure what she means by that. When you lose elections, you lose elections. You don't get brownie points for losing elections or anything else for that matter. Be that as it may, Mamata Banerjee is not alone. Mayawati was quick to blame her alliance partner Akhilesh Yadav for their defeat. We've discussed that in detail on the show. Their Gathbandhan did not survive even 2 full weeks after the results, just as the Prime Minister had predicted during the election.
साथियों, एक बुलंद और मजबूत सरकार ही बुलंद और मजबूत भारत का सपना साकार कर सकती है। खोखले वादे करने वालों, खोखली दोस्ती करने वालों का सच आप अच्छी तरह जानते हैं। एक दोस्ती उत्तर प्रदेश के जब विधानसभा के चुनाव चल रहे थे, एक दोस्ती यूपी चुनाव के समय भी हुई थी, और चुनाव खत्म हुआ, दोस्ती भी खत्म हो गई और दुश्मनी में पलट गई। अब एक दोस्ती फिर हुई है, लेकिन इसके टूटने की तारीख भी तय है। आपको बताओ, एक फर्जी दोस्ती टूटने की तारीख बताओ। एक फर्जी दोस्ती कब टूटेगी तारीख बताओ। आपको मालूम है कब टूटेगी? 23 मई दिन गुरुवार ये फर्जी दोस्ती फिर से टूट जाएगी, और इस दिन बुआ और बबुआ।
Sure enough, that's happened. Meanwhile, the Congress is plunging to new lows, especially in Rajasthan. Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot blames Sachin Pilot for his son's defeat. Vaibhav Gehlot lost their family seat of Jodhpur in this election. This blame game, in fact, is the latest in the past struggle that has been on between Gehlot and Pilot in Rajasthan. In Punjab, Chief Minister Captain Amrinder Singh has blamed Navjot Singh Sidhu for the poor performance in urban areas of the state. And it's not just the states. The Congress is divided at the centre as well. The party president, Rahul Gandhi, accused 3 senior leaders, Kamal Nath, P. Chidambaram and Ashok Gehlot, of putting their sons above the party. For Rahul Gandhi to say this, that's quite something. It's as if they're all looking for fall guys. New excuses to explain the defeat instead of taking a hard look at the facts and the errors. Let's help them. The BJP decimated the Congress in the Hindi heartland. In every state, where the two parties, the BJP and the Congress, faced off directly, the BJP won. The numbers bear this out. Finding scapegoats will not help in a situation like this. If Congress leaders are blaming each other for the defeat in Rajasthan and Punjab, they're blaming the Aam Aadmi Party for the Delhi fiasco. And Arvind Kejriwal's party, in turn, is blaming the Congress for what happened in the capital. Down south in Karnataka, the JDS-Congress alliance looks like the South Indian version of the Gathbandhan in Uttar Pradesh. The JDS president has resigned from his post already. He says the party and its leader H.D. Devegowda were betrayed. By whom? Who betrayed them? That's a question he hasn't answered. Who betrayed them? Your guess is as good as mine. In the western state of Maharashtra too, the Congress is facing a turmoil. Senior leaders Radhakrishnan Vikhe Patil and Abdul Sattar have quit the party. They're expected to join the BJP, and this state goes to assembly polls later this year, so not very good signs. This dissent and infighting is not limited to the opposition though. Some in the NDA, the BJP's own allies, are also complaining. For instance, in Bihar, Nitish Kumar's JDU stayed out of the government after they blamed the BJP of giving allies only a symbolic representation. The JDU was offered one ministerial berth. They refused to take it. Now the RJD is blaming the BJP for the problems of the JDU. It is complicated. RJD blaming the BJP for what's wrong with the JDU. It's funny because RJD ran a high-octane campaign against the JDU just a few weeks back. The RJD says that it's ready to welcome the JDU as an ally. Now, if you're wondering why the RJD itself is not analyzing its own poll debacle, let me tell you something. Senior leaders of this party, the RJD, have blamed Lalu's two sons, Tejasvi and Tej Pratap, for the defeat already. So their bit of finding scapegoats is over. After all, it is the season of sore losers. And a big development coming in. The Modi government is planning an economic census, perhaps the biggest this country has ever seen. Preparations are underway for the 7th economic census of India. What is so special about this one? Since independence, India has conducted 6 economic census exercises. Censuses is a word, by the way. In 1977, 1980, 1990, 1998, 2005 and 2013. 6 times. Now, this 7th exercise is likely to begin from the last week of this month. Why is it important? After all, what is an economic census? What does it seek to find? An economic census will count all entrepreneurial units, meaning all workplaces with economic activity. They could be in any sector, agricultural, non-agricultural, in production, distribution, services, anything that generates money. What's the scale, you may ask? 27 crore houses and 7 crore house establishments will be surveyed. This is a bit technical. House establishments, we are told, are mostly unregistered small business activities. What would the data provide? We'll get information on the number of establishments, the number of persons employed, state of the jobs, source of finance, and nature of ownership of a firm, any size. In 6 months' time, India will have the much-needed data on jobs. How many people are employed in this country, both in the formal and informal sectors? Every economic census since 1977 has been an improvement over the previous one. What's new this time? First things first, the scale. No economic census as big as this one has ever been attempted in the past. The scale is similar to a population census, which means that more specific data on employment and economic conditions of people of India will be obtained. 2. Self-employment of all kinds will be documented. So far, there was no way to track self-employed workers in the informal sector in India. That would end with this exercise, which basically means for the first time, street vendors and hawkers will be mainstream, the so-called pakoda walas. They too are gainfully employed and they must be counted. 3. Earnings of the small, medium and large establishments will be on record. So what is the manpower cost of this exercise? A whopping 12 lakh surveyors will carry out the census. Officials of the NSSO, the National Sample Survey Organization, will study the reports to compile the census. The government is accelerating the program. Recently, a training camp was organized in Delhi for the top officials involved in this exercise. So far, nearly 6,000 other programs have been organized across India to train the people who will conduct this survey. So the one thing that India has been missing sorely will be available in 4 months' time: accurate jobs data. The debate over the extent of employment and the quality of jobs came to the fore during this election campaign, but no credible data was available. Now, data on jobs is not the only thing that the survey is looking for. It will help identify regions with jobs and regions which need jobs, regions with less financial activity and regions with more activity. That's the geographical aspect of it. There's also a socio-economic angle. The economic census will also help the government to identify the nature of people involved in jobs and ownership patterns. This will help the government target those regions and social groups which need help, which are disadvantaged. Welfare measures can be better planned and better targeted with data like this. From a purely business point of view, the census will help the government analyze the companies in this country and assess the prevailing financial conditions in these firms. Now, the government says that such surveys will take place once every 3 years, starting with this one. And that's a step in the right direction, we say. Frequent collection of highly important but variable data is crucial for any government to keep a closer tab on the economy, and this is a good start in that direction. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Watch. Thanks very much for being with us.